Now we need to create a user model as well so that we can interact with our users in our database. And you'll understand what a model is in a second. Let's close this. And if we go into our database, we can browse our collections. And a collection is just like a table. So here we don't have any collections or databases. Sometimes MongoDB by default might give you a database that is called as sample, but in our case, I don't have it. And if you see if you see that sample database, just don't worry about that at all. You could even ignore that. So now we would like to add our models, and we're gonna have user models as well as message models. And let's go into the backend. We're gonna have that folder called models, and let's just shrink everything for now. Inside the models, we will have the user model, and again, I would like to put model extension, just a preference, so user model.js. And now inside this user model, we're gonna have a couple of different fields, such as full name, username, password, gender, as well as the profile picture. So this is how you would create a model. So import mongoose from mongoose, then we will say const user schema. So first you create a schema, and let's say new mongoose schema, and just open up an object. And now this is the place that we will put our fields. So we'll like to have the full name. That is going to be type of string, and let's just say type will be string. And then let's say it is going to be required, every user should have a full name, and then we will put the username. So this is going to be same type string, required, and unique. So it should be unique so that every user has only that unique username. And then we would like to have the password. So it is going to be type of string, required, and minimum length of 6, and that's how you can add it. And then the other thing that we'd like to have will be gender. So we'll say type will be string, it is going to be required, and we could use something like enum, and this will so let's just have it enum. So it is either going to be, let's say, male or female. We use this enum field when we would like to have some certain values, and this is our application. We'll be using these values. Now we could add something like profile pic. I'll just put it into the next line, profile pic, and then this is going to be type of string, and it shouldn't be required, and by default it's going to be this empty field. And let's save. So that was our schema. Now we'd like to create a model based off of this schema. So we'll say const model, that's going to be user, not model, mongoose.model user and user schema. Now here we just put this user, that should be not plural, but that should be singular. And then you don't say something like user, but just try to make it uppercase or capitalize, and MongoDB will figure out, or Mongoose will figure out, and just make it to be something like users. And if you would like to create people model, you would say person, and that will just figure out, okay, this user would like to create a people collection. And I don't know why this is being implemented like this, but that's how they decided. And now let's say export default the user model. And that's gonna be it for this file. We have all these fields, we create the model depending on the schema that we have, and now we are able to use this user model in our files. So with this, I think we can go and work with this controller. So here we need to update something else. So here we can't just go and get these values from request.body. To be able to do it, we need to use a middleware. So let's first update this file a bit. Maybe just organize this. So I will put my variables to up here, and then call that, so this config call, and then take this middleware and just put it here. This is going to be our route. We could maybe just delete it, or let's just have it, but I'll just comment this out. And then, so that was our middleware. These are our package imports, file imports, variables, .env-config, and then we'd like to add another middleware. So let's say app.use express JSON. So this will allow you to get the extract this fields from request.body. And if we have to put some comments, we got some from Copilot to parse the incoming request with JSON payloads. So from request.body. Okay, that was our middleware as well. Now here we'll just go ahead and try to sign up a user. So let's say if password is not equal to the confirm password, that means passwords do not match. So return res.status of 400, which means there was an error, and JSON an object with the error field that says passwords do not match. And after this if check, we can say const user await. Now we will call the user model, and we need to add this .js at the end so that we don't get any errors. And we'll say dot find one with this username. So this will check if this user exists in our database with this username. So we'll say if username, if this user existed, then just return this error that says username already exists. But if it isn't, so which means we're still continuing with this function, there is not any errors. There is one thing that we need to do. So we would like to take this password and hash it, and I'll show you what that means, but let's for now just skip that and let's say hash password here. And then we would like to put some random profile picture, and for this I have found an API. Again, I will put the comment here. It is this one. Now let's copy this and visit that API. So this API gives us placeholder avatars. Now there we can see we have some boys and we have some girls as well. And if you would like to get some unique ones, there is this, I think if we click to this document, okay, we're gonna get this URL. Now let's just copy this boy, and if we paste it, now every time you refresh, that's gonna give you a different profile picture. Okay, so it just randomly gives you, and same goes for the girls. Now every time you refresh, there's a different profile pic, and to be able to get a unique one, so they tell us you could use something like username. So if you go with this Scott, every time we refresh, it's gonna be the same user profile picture, and that's what we'll be using. I will copy this. So you use boy for boys and then girl for girls. I copy that. Now I will say const boy profile pic, and then I will just open up backticks, paste it. Now the username will not be Scott, but this username that we are getting from the user. And then I will duplicate this, and that's gonna be girl profile pic, and then we will update this. Okay, and now we'll just use this depending on the user gender. So let's say const new user await. So we could use this user model, and we need to not await but new user, and pass an object. Now we're gonna pass the full name. So the full name of this user will be the full name that we get from user inputs. But since they are the same thing, we could just shorten this with only adding the key. So we'll have the full name, the username, the password, right? And we will have the gender. And lastly, we'll say the profile pic will be dynamic. So if the gender is equal to male, then we will use boy profile picture, but if it is female, then we will use this profile picture. And that should not be okay. So we have a typo here. Let's just fix it. And now we will say new user.save. We're just gonna save it to the database. So yeah, and let's just say res.status of 201, which means the created, okay, successfully created status code this is. And then we'll say JSON and just pass the user. So in MongoDB, we got a field that is underscore ID that will be put automatically. And we'll say new user underscore ID. We will say full name, new user dot full name, and then we will have the username as well as the profile pic. And for the catch, we can go and say something like res.status of 500, and we could say something like maybe internal server error, and we could say console.log error in sign up controller, and then just pass the error message so that we can debug this in our terminal. And now if we save this, we can test it out. I will go into my Postman. So we have the sign up route, and we will pass some data, and those data will be these fields. So full name, username, I'll just actually copy all of them and then just paste it one by one. Okay, so I will comment this out and just put it. So full name, let's say something like John Doe, and then duplicate this. So this will be the username, and then we will have the password. So let's say from 1 to 6, and then confirm password. And I'll just zoom in a bit. Sorry, I didn't even realize. So I am zooming in from these view and zoom in. Okay, maybe this is a bit too much. I'll just zoom out once. Okay, now I think that should be readable from the video. We got the confirm password. And lastly, we'll have the gender. Let's say this is gonna be male. And now if we send this, hopefully that should work. And it says passwords don't match. So 1 2 3 4 5 6, 1 2 3 4 5 6. And let's see why that is. So if password is not equal to confirm password, right? Passwords do not match. So confirm password 1 to 6, again 1 to 6. Let's send it again. Okay, that should be password. I had a typo here. Let's save and send it again. Okay, so user has been created. There we can see we have this status code. That means we passed all those if checks and we were able to make it until this line, and we saved the user to database. Now let's check it out. If we refresh here, we should be able to see the user's collection in our database. And here is the user, and we got this underscore ID field as well. I just zoom in a bit, and this has been generated by Mongoose or MongoDB. And I said that we'll be hashing these passwords. And the reason is now you shouldn't be able to see your user's passwords. Imagine if someone steals your database, they will be able to just get access to every user in your database. So for this, we'll be using that bcrypt.js library. So let's say import bcrypt.js from bcrypt.js, and let's put it at the top and give a bit space. Then before we try to, okay, we even put comment here. So we're gonna hash the password, and this is how we would do it. So const, first you need to create something called salt. So await bcrypt.js gen salt, and most of the time we put this value as being 10. So the higher it is, it'll be more secure, but the higher it is, it'll be slower as well. So if you put something like 50, that will take a long time to create the salt. And the number 10 is the default that we generally do. Now we created the salt, and let's call this as bcrypt, not the bcrypt.js. So let's update it. So we'll say const hashed password, and we'll say await bcrypt dot hash. So we're gonna hash the password the user sends us. So it is this password we are getting. We're just gonna hash it with this salt, and instead of saving this user with this password, now we'll say hashed password. And now if we save this, hopefully it's gonna work. let's go into the Postman and create another user. Let's say Bob. And we could just leave the password as it is. I will send this now. We got the new user. Let's check it out. Refresh. And now the password should be hashed, as we can see now. It is not 126, right? And that's something that you should keep in mind when building applications. Now let's take a look at this file. Just reiterate quickly. So we got the inputs from the user. We check if passwords do not match. We return this error with this status code. And then we check if this user exists in our database, depending on this username. If user exists, then we return this error that says username already exists. But if user is not exist, then we are gonna try to create this user. So we hash the password, then we determined the user profile, the profile picture, and then we just create the user with the full name that is being passed. So all these inputs, and then we try to save this user to the database and just send it as a response. Now I will cut this for a second and I will just even optimize this. I will say if there is new user, just paste this part, but else we could return something like invalid user data. Now I will save this file and I think that looks a bit cleaner. And there is one more thing that we'd like to do, that is to actually generate JWT token. And let's do it now. We are going to go into the backend and let's create a folder. What should we call it? Let's go with utils and we'll say generate token and set cookie, or maybe just generate token.js. Let me just fix this. That should be a lowercase js. And now in this function, we will try to just create a JWT and set it in the set it into the cookie. So let's say import JWT from JSON Web Token package that we installed previously, and let's have this function generate. Okay, so we'll have this function called generate token and set cookie. So we are gonna get the response as well as, let's say, the user ID as an argument. And then inside this, we'll try to create the token. So const token, that will be JWT sign, and that's how you create a token. And we will say, so it needs a payload and we pass the user ID. Let's just type this function out and then I will explain once more. So the other thing that we need to add, the secret or private key, and we can have it in our .env file. So here we'll just add that field, JWT secret, and that could be any random value, but let's just create one in our terminal. So I will open up a new terminal and then I will make it type of bash, git bash, and then open SSL rand, so dash base 64 32. And if we just press enter, that's going to give us this kind of secure secret. I will copy this and just close this and this one. Okay, so we could put this secret into here. Now we'll be using this JWT secret to sign this token. And the other thing that we need is just options. And we could say something like expires in, let's say, 15 days, not 30. I'll update this with 15D. And now that we have created the token, we would like to set it into cookie. So res.cookie with the name of JWT, that could be anything, maybe token or JWT token. I'll go with JWT, then we'll pass the token and then some options. So here basically we call this method that is JWT.sign. So this takes the payload and this is the information that will be embedded in the JWT token. And there is this JWT secret, and this is the key that is used to sign the token. So it'll create a digital signature. And when we want to verify this token, we will use this payload. And that's how JWT works in simple terms. And then we created the token. We also want to set it as a cookie. So we use res.cookie, JWT, pass the token, and some options just to make this a bit secure. So first, let's just say max age, and we'll say 15 days, but we can't really put it as a string. That should be in the format of milliseconds. So we'll just say 15 days, 24 hours, 16 minutes, 60 minutes, 60 seconds, and 1000 milliseconds. I think that's the order that we just added. So let's say that should be in the milliseconds format, and we will say it should be HTTP only true. And this says this cookie should only be accessible, so only HTTP only. So users cannot access this cookie via JavaScript. And this is used to, let me just put a comment. So prevent XSS attacks, which is also known as cross-site scripting attacks. So if you wanted to check that out, just pause the video here and take a look at this attack. But basically, we add this so that this cookie is not accessible via JavaScript. And then we have this same site attribute as well. So we could say strict. And again, this is something that we use to prevent some attacks. And so CSRF attacks, cross-site request, forgery attacks in long. So this is the function that we have. Lastly, just say export default this function. So we created the token by calling this sign method, and we need to send a payload to this method, and then as well as our secret. And we said that this token should expire in 15 days. Then we sent this in our response by adding these options just to make this a bit secure, and just say this is the maximum age that should cookie live. And then we just export default this function. Now we're going to go here and just call that function. So that should be, I think, await and generate token and set cookie. We're going to import that. Let's see, it should be from this file .js. Now we have an error, I think. Let's save, and I'll just try to see. We have utils, so we need to go one up, utils, and then generate token.js. So for some reason it says this is the file extension, but it isn't. I updated that, right? So I'll just preload my VS Code. Control Shift P, I'll say reload window. Hopefully it should fix now, and here we go. Now it is working fine. I will say we'll just delete this await because it is not an async function. We'll send the response as well as the user ID. So that's going to be new user underscore ID and then the response. And if we save, and we can test it out now in our browser. Let's go and create a new user. I'll say Jane Doe. And then password could be same, and we'll say female. Now let's save and send this one. This has been created. Now we can get a cookie that is JWT, and it has been created successfully. And also we can see that it says HTTP only is true, and it says secure is false because we are in localhost, so it is not HTTPS. And we can add it if we go into the options. We could say secure field, and we could say so either true or false, but we'll make it dynamic. So process.env, if we are in the development, it is not going to be true. And if we are in the production, then that will be true. Okay, so currently it is false, and let's create this environment variable. So that's going to be development for now, and when we deploy it, we could update it. Let's save all these files, and if we try to sign up again, so still it is not secure, but that's going to change in production. Now that we have the sign up functionality, we can go ahead and try to just log in the user. So I will duplicate this one now and call it as login, and we'll change the URL. That will be, or the endpoint, that's going to be a login. We're going to again send some body. So we will just send the username. Now let's delete this comment, and username as well as the password. Let's delete this comment and save this, also this one. Okay, so that should be like this. We have the username and password. Now in our sign up function, let's shrink this. I mean in our login function, I'm sorry, that should be async. We're gonna have the try catch again, and in the catch we could basically copy this and then paste it. So instead of error in sign up controller, we'll just say login controller, and then shrink this now. In the try again, we're gonna get our username and password from request.body. So username, password, and then we will just say const user await user dot find one with this username. If this user is not exist, or maybe let's first check again for the password. So is password correct? And we need to decode this password. So await bcrypt compare method. So we'll say the password as well as the user dot password. So we say the password from the input and then the password this user has in the database. Just compare them, and if it is true, then this value will be true. But now what happens if this user is not existed? So this will throw us an error, and we could back it off with an empty string. Now we say to bcrypt compare this password, and if it is undefined or null, compare it with an empty string, and that will not throw us any errors. So let's say if there is not user, or if password is not correct, then return this error that says invalid credentials, or let's say invalid username or password. So we don't say which one is not correct. And then after we do this, we will say generate token and set cookie. Again, send the payload as well as the response. And if that was successful as well, we'll just say res.status 200 and just return these values. So get the inputs from user, check if this user exists or not, check if the password is correct or not, and if any of them false, then just return this error, generate the token and set cookie, and then just send this response. Let's save and try to log in. So this is the user that we have created in our database. If we put something like a wrong password, we're gonna get this error that says invalid username or password. If we put the correct one, it is just gonna log us in. And if we delete this part, I think we're gonna get an error. So let's say Jane Doe X, which is a user that does not exist in our database. If we send now, we have this error that says internal server error. And if we take a look at the console, we will see that illegal arguments, string and undefined. So this is something bcrypt JS package returns you. That's why you need to add this part. And I have explained this just a couple of seconds ago. So I will save this file, and now let's try to add the logout function. And that's going to be pretty basic or simple. So try catch, let's get this part. Oops, we're going to put it into catch, error in logout controller, internal server error. And then that's going to be async. So res.cookie, JWT, and we would like to just take this value to be nothing, and maximum age will be 0. So max age 0. And then we will say res.status. So 200 logged out successfully. If we save now, let's try to log out. Duplicate this. That should be a logout. Logout route. We don't need anybody, so let's say none. And now if we send this, it says logged out successfully, and now we don't have any cookies because we just clear them out, right? So just like here, and we could delete this async, we don't really need it. So that's gonna be it for our authentication routes. Now we can sign up. by getting these inputs, we run some if checks and handle the errors. Otherwise, we hash the password, generate a profile pic, and then just save this user to our database and just generate a token and set it as a cookie. And then we do the same thing for login. If there is these errors, then we just handle it. Otherwise, we log the user in by creating this token and setting the cookie, and we send it as a response. And then in the logout, we just clear out them. And as the next step, we would like to create a message model and then a message controller so that we could send messages and get messages from our database.